All right. Welcome to another episode of The Close-Up. I'm your host, Stephen Cameron, a part of Orlando Magic HQ. Today is part 2 of my conversation with Joe Mullinax, where we're going to get in deeper about who Desmond Bane is as a player and how he can help this Orlando Magic team. Joe Mullinax is the host of Locked On Grizzlies, big Grizzlies fan, been covering the team for a very long time, and just really smart guy. We had a great conversation. Joe's a great guy. But this is part 2. Before we get into the conversation, just remind you all that tune into all things Orlando Magic HQ. We're keeping you up to date with what's going on this summer with the Orlando Magic, giving you all the latest news and reports and opinions. We have shows coming out, pretty much weekly in podcast form. The draft is right around the corner. We got it all going on. Check out our Patreon program. We've been ramping up the content we've been dropping for you guys. If you're a Patreon subscriber, you get exclusive content, including podcast articles and a part of our group chat. You can support us for as little as $5 a month to get access to that platform. And it just really helps us stay operating. Not going to hold this intro much longer. We're just going to get right into part 2 with Joe Mullinax of Locked On Grizzlies about the Desmond Bane acquisition for the Orlando Magic. I want to talk a little bit more specifically about Desmond Bane, the player now.
Sure.
We've gotten into a lot of the whys and the hows and maybe what's to comes and the trade value. But now let's talk about him as a player. And we've gotten into it a little bit, but I really want to learn a lot more from your perspective, who've watched him his whole career and how he's kind of worked out. It's, from my perspective, the Magic, we all know they were dead last in shooting. They were 27th in offense last year, and they had a very stagnant offense, and there was not a lot of off-ball movement. Now they got the guy who is second in the league last year on catch and shoot threes off movement, according to Second Spectrum, other than, like I said, Stephen Curry. And they've just not had that type of player. When you look at Desmond Bane, let's talk about his shooting. I mean, it's elite, but that's off the catch and shoot. How do you view him as a on-ball, self-creator with the ball in his hands? What outside of just an open catch and shoot? Tell me about Desmond Bane's game.
As a self-creator, he's not as good as he is as a three-point shooter because he's elite at that.
Right.
But he's very good. And that is something that he has built himself going back to when he was drafted out of TCU. We call him Downhill Des. He has a frame. If nobody's ever seen Desmond Bane, you can tell he doesn't miss arm day at the gym. He's a big rocked up dude. He is very capable of getting to the basket, creating for himself, finishing at the rim. He's not elite there, I want to stress, but he's definitely a 3-level scorer. He can do that for you. And he's going to do that for the Magic, especially considering he has bigger bodies on the wing than he's ever really had before. As a member of the Grizzlies, it was always smaller guards and forwards, obviously working so closely with Morant. The Magic are just bigger at all the other positions than the Grizzlies were, except for maybe the exception of Jaren and of course, Edey in this most recent rookie season. So you're going to like his downhill ability, where, again, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, if you expect him to pass out of that and make the right decisions consistently, you're going to be disappointed. He had a career worst turnover percentage this past season. And again, I want to stress, I put some of the blame for that on Taylor Jenkins. And Jenkins got fired. And I think they used him too aggressively in that way. We've said it numerous times. You can make an argument in the last 5 years, outside of Steph Curry, Desmond Bane is the best three-point shooter in the NBA. There's an argument there. And they used him more and more over the last 2 years, in part because of need, with Ja Morant being in and out of the lineup. He did more facilitation of offense, not for himself necessarily, but for others. And he struggled there. He was inconsistent. So in Orlando, and that's what makes me nervous for the Magic, that's my one hang up on the deal, is I worry that they see him because they have other guys that are like secondary facilitators. I'd put Suggs in that category. Maybe you disagree with that. You watch the Magic more than me. but I wouldn't say Suggs is a true point guard. He's more of a combo guard. Bane is also a combo guard. Without a true point, are you going to expect him to initiate, facilitate, create for others? And if that's the case on a consistent basis, are you maximizing Desmond Bane? Because the Grizzlies didn't maximize Desmond Bane this past year, his skill set. And Dez has not improved as a decision maker in that way, and that's where he takes some of that blame. But he also was not put in positions to be the best version of himself on a night in, night out basis. And obviously the coaching staff, Mosley, I believe is the last name of the coach there in Orlando. I think that he'll put them in a good spot. And I believe that Desmond will hopefully be given a chance to remind everybody of just what he's capable of as a three-point shooter. I don't think anybody forgot that Bane can shoot the three, but in Memphis, it just wasn't a priority for him this past year. And I think that hurt his value, at least in the eyes of the Grizzlies.
Yeah, he went from the last 3 years, 3 seasons ago, 7 attempts per game, 8 attempts per game last season, or 2 seasons ago, to this past season, 6 attempts per game. Still all elite numbers, 40%, 38%, this last year, 39%. It's obviously elite, but like you saw the number of attempts go down this past season. You bring up, a good point. He's still not a point guard. The Magic still don't really have a point guard in that starting unit. And I've tossed and turned with this for a little while now. Even with my approach to team building before this trade happened. And what I've kind of taken away from last year and even watching the playoffs is, yes, you could still go out and get a point guard, particularly like a decent player for the second unit that can be staggered with the starters at times to help initiate the offense. But the Magic just lacked players last year that could do anything with the ball in their hands. There was just very little guys outside of Paulo and Franz and even Suggs to an extent that could create for themselves, or even like just dribble and drive. You had KCP. Unless it's like a one dribble step into the 2-point, into the perimeter, inside the perimeter, right, to make a 2-point shot, he's not driving to the basket with the ball. Jonathan Isaac is not a guy who's going to put the ball on the floor and drive to the basket. He can make some off-ball cuts, but mostly he's a catch-and-shoot 3-point guy who's not hitting threes. Anthony Black, still very young, growing, is a guy who can, definitely do some things with the ball and is going to get better there, but, he's got some growth there. Gary Harris, another guy, catch and shoot specialist, not really going to put the ball on the floor. They had a lot of play finishers. They had very little guys that could do anything in between play finishing and catch and shoot. And Desmond Bane, in my opinion, fills that gap. He is a guy who can bring the ball up the court in transition. Even not in transition, he can bring the ball up the court. You probably don't want him doing that every possession, but right, when you look at the Magic now, they have Paulo and Franz, who no matter who they brought in, even if they brought in Darius Garland or, Chris Paul, one of these high-level point guards that I don't know if either one of them were realistic, but that type of guard, the ball's still going to go through Paulo and Franz probably 75% of the time. That's just kind of like, you want the ball to be in your best player's hands, and they were always going to be those guys, high usage on-ball players. And so, to me, being the optimist, okay, you didn't get that point guard to take a little bit of ease off, but you got another capable ball handler who can do things and still, cool. You pass the ball to Desmond or Suggs. They both can do things while Franz and Paulo kind of get to their spots, take advantage of a mismatch, get the ball thrown into them. Desmond might not be the best passer, but I don't see what I've seen and think he's a bad passer altogether. I'd be interested when you think of it more of less of a they need a point guard and more of they have 4 guys that can handle the ball and make fairly smart decisions with it. How do you think Desmond fits in that type of an environment where, again, we look at the Pacers, for example, and even SGA with the Thunder in these finals, like I think Jalen Williams handled more point guard duties than SGA in game 4, at least in the first half or something like that. I I thought I remember reading a stat like that. What do you think about him being a part of a group that can actually dribble the ball, to say it
If you
lightly?
need him to just dribble the ball, he most certainly can do that. He's a creator off dribble, and again, especially for himself, he
Sure.
can do that. It's the decision making afterwards. And my counter would be, do you trust Paolo and Franz to essentially be de facto point guards,
Sure.
point forward? Do you trust them to make, especially Banchero, the way that he's grown as an offensive weapon, double teams are going to come. Do you trust him to consistently make that pass off the bounce, down, head down? He's into his motion already, into his set movement. And now that double comes late, do you trust him to make that pass? Because I've seen time and again Desmond Bane try to make that pass and fail.
Yeah.
And that's not something that's a strength of Desmond Bane's game. If you
Makes
allow
sense.
Desmond Bane to be a catch and shoot 3-point shooter who does that occasionally, that's the best use of Desmond Bane. And to me, if I were Orlando, now that I have Desmond Bane in the fold, somebody like Tyus Jones makes a heck of a lot of sense in terms of bringing him in. Like you said, he doesn't have to be a starter, but he could be somebody that plays 20 minutes off the bench, like you said, alongside starters, a majority of those minutes being alongside Desmond Bane, because they have built-in camaraderie already and chemistry going back to their time together in Memphis. Tyus was an excellent, I call him, he's the best substitute teacher in the NBA. He was not a good backup for Ja Morant. He wasn't, because as a reserve, he didn't do well. As a starter in Memphis, hell yeah. Like that dude cooked. And one of the reasons he cooked was because he was able to create offense for others like Desmond Bane and those catch and shoot opportunities. So like you said earlier in the show, even if they brought in somebody to be an 18 to 20 minute guy off the bench to supplement that some, I think that puts you in a better position to maximize Desmond Bane. If you don't address it at all, which I don't think Orlando will do, I think they'll go out and try to find somebody.
Yeah.
If you don't address that at all, that is where my concern would come into play. Because again, is that the best use of Paolo Banchero? You want that guy to be a guy that can go and get his own bucket, especially in those big time moments. You don't want him to have to worry about being that creator for somebody else. Any place where you can alleviate that is where the value really magnifies or amplifies for Bane. But in terms of what you just described, can Bane create for himself off the bounce and actually dribble the basketball? Yeah, Desmond Bane can most certainly do that.
That's good, because we need that in any capacity.
So then you're on the right track.
What I don't watch as much Grizzlies as you do by any means.
Sure.
I see the last 2 seasons he's had 5 assists per game, which seems pretty good, especially when I'm looking at
combo guard.
Guys like, Kobe White, Anthony Simons, Colin Sextons. Sure. None of them had 5 assists per game the last couple of years. How does he get those? Like, I hear your concerns about, and I trust your concerns about him not being like, he's not a primary. Don't think of him as a primary, right, even though he's had to do that. What are his strengths in order to make those types of reads, to get those types of assist numbers? How is he utilized there to have some success there? Obviously, there's some turnovers. He's, about a little over 2 turnovers a game, not quite 3, with his playmaking. But just tell me a little bit more about how those come to be.
His strength as a passer comes from his strength on the perimeter.
Okay.
So teams over rotate to him because the shooter, right? They know who the Grizzlies shooter was.
Yeah.
They over rotate. He makes the extra pass, going from a good shot to a great shot. There are times on his downhill movements that he is able to find a slasher backside, or he is able to throw a quick little alley-oop pass. He's not bad at it. I want to stress that. That's not something he's bad at. But I say he's not bad at it through the lens of understanding him as a combo guard, right?
Yeah.
It's all about archetypes now, right? It's not positions anymore in basketball.
Sure.
So he's a combo type of wing who can do those things for you. If you are looking for him to be a pass-first facilitator of your offense, which I don't think Orlando is, but if that's what you were expecting of him, you are going to be disappointed, because that is not the best use of him.
That makes sense.
The challenge for the Magic is going to be, how do you put Bane in those positions to have those open threes, which are going to come, because you're right, Wagner and Banchero, especially Banchero, are going to be prioritized in defensive game plans. So Bane's going to get open looks. How do you get him in a spot where he's able to make that extra good pass into a great shot Or how do you allow for him to get to those downhill sensibilities, finding the lob threat, the dunker in the dunker spot off of his dribble penetration when teams do over rotate to him defensively? That's going to be the challenge. If you want him to be your lead guard like a Chris Paul, coming up and initiating offense 2/3 of the time, that's not getting the most out of Desmond Bane, and Magic fans will be disappointed. It's all about the follow through on this for me. In the here and now, in terms of the person you're getting, the leader that you're getting, I talked about this on our show the other day. The Grizzlies GM, Zach Kleiman, said that they're looking for dogs, like they want more, and they traded the one guy of the big three that is a dog, like a certified competitor. I can't say that about Ja Morant because he's not on the court enough, and that's not really Jaren Jackson Jr. He's a big that's extremely skilled, but you look at his rebounding numbers, which is not a perfect measure of the dogness, but is a decent indicator, especially when you're 6'11", 245, and that's not his game. That doesn't mean that Jaren isn't worth a max contract. But it does mean if you're prioritizing that type of competitive mindset and a different mentality, Dez was the one of the three that has that. So the Magic are getting all of that and more with Desmond Bane. He really is going to fit in that way, in a remarkable way for this team. My concern is how Orlando plans on using him in the absence of a true point guard.
Yeah.
And if they can navigate that, then it's going to be a home run worth everything the Magic gave up for him. If they're not able to navigate that, there's going to be frustrated Orlando fans in 8 months. I think that after, again, you watch more Magic basketball than me, but the games that I have watched, I've been impressed with Mosley and his staff. And I do think that they will be able to find the way to use Bane in a way that Jenkins at the end wasn't able to.
I'm interested to hear your opinion on the other side of the ball, defensively. The Magic hang their hat on their defense. They've been a top 3 defense the last 2 years in a row. It's what allowed them to stay competitive with losing Paulo and Franz at the same time, and even going on some wins there. It's just that they have a defensive-minded coach with Jamal Mosley. That is their calling card. It seems like we've both admitted earlier that Baines is a step down from KCP as a defender. KCP's got a lot of speed there. Just a really high IQ player there. He's lost a hair bit of a step of his prime defensively, KCP, but he still definitely wasn't bad here in Orlando by any means. But he wasn't guarding the primary guys anymore. He was guarding the second best guy, either as a guard or a wing. They were either giving that assignment to Suggs when he was healthy, or Franz as the primary defender. And I think that kind of will stay true. I think Suggs and Franz, depending on who the best guy on the opposing team is, will still probably take the primaries as well. Tell me a little bit more about the strength and weaknesses as Desmond Bane as a defender. Because I don't view him as an outsider, as like he's a bad defender. I don't see him as like an elite defender by any means, but I don't view him as like a liability on that end. But I'd love to hear your perspective as someone who, the Grizzlies teams weren't bad defensive teams by any means, and it seemed like Bane was a part of that. What's your perspective on Desmond Bane, the defender?
He's a neutral defender.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit above average, but I would put him more at neutral. The pros of him as a defender are that he's going to play his ass off. Like, he's going to do his absolute best. Like, he is a try-hard. He's not a traffic cone that's just going to stand there and watch. He's a good rebounder for his position. He will go and attack whatever his assignment is, and he's a good scheme defender. He'll fit with whatever the Magic are trying to do. Where he comes up short, pun intended, is in wingspan. Yeah, right. Like, he was called T-Rex arms a few times in Memphis. I think he's one of the players that has a negative wingspan. Like, his wingspan is shorter than his height. And
which is really funny for Magic fans, because the front office is known as like the wingspan whisperers, like that they only want wingspan. So this is a little bit out of pocket for them. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just laugh there because
I think that might be a good example of the reason why they're okay with it. Right? Like, to your point, like, Suggs will take the primary defensive. There were times, especially once Jalen Wells got hurt, where Bane was taking the primary defensive job. Right? That will rarely be the case for him in Orlando. So he has physical limitations. He's undersized, right? He's 6'5". There are few true shooting guards in the NBA anymore. To me, if you allow Bane to be, he has the skill set of a true shooting guard, but at the same time, in terms of his size, it is not ideal for that position in the NBA anymore. He's undersized for an NBA wing. He's more so along the lines, ironically, of what you'd like your point guard to be in terms of his size, physically.
Yeah.
So that's going to be something that teams are going to try to attack. Now, the good news for the Orlando Magic is Bane is a competitor on a nightly basis. And while he may lose some of those battles because he physically can't stop it, it's not going to be because, he was out of position or, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. He's going to be in the right spot. There just might be times where he's playing against Kevin Durant or, in the Eastern Conference, there might be times that he's playing against somebody like Jaylen Brown, who's just bigger than him, and he's going to lose because the guy is bigger than him and has a similar skill, if not a little bit more skill. So I'd be worried about the size of Bane. To be honest with you, if a team could use him like Alex Caruso, right, in terms of his strength and his center of gravity, like the way that they have Caruso defending, Jokic and some of these bigger guys in the finals, like Miles Turner, that would be an interesting use of Bane because of the versatility that the Magic provide. But if you want him to defend bigger wings, he's going to get picked on.
That makes a lot of sense. And I probably agree with that, like from what I know. I definitely agree because you've watched him a lot more than I do, but it sounds from you described kind of what I perceive Desmond Bane to be. Like, he's a high IQ defender. He's going to give a lot of effort and try and even have some success, but there are going to be times where his size is just going to get the best of him because he doesn't have the ability to, get his hand in the right spot when someone who's got 4 or 5, you got a 6'7", 6'8" wing, shooting over him or something like that. And that makes a lot of sense.
It's one of the reasons why this option for the Magic was so much better than Anthony Simons.
Yeah.
Right? Like if Simons was your previous best case scenario before Bane became realistic, Magic fans should be thrilled because Simons, the defensive concerns with Bane multiply them by 10. And that's where you are with Simons. Whereas Bane, he's going to put forth the effort. It's very possible because he doesn't have to be the lead defender or even, depending on who he's out there with in terms of rotations, the second defender. It might allow for Bane to be even better on that end. It all comes down to the follow-through for the Magic coaching staff.
I'm looking forward to finding out. I'm looking forward next season to I've just been on cloud 9 for the last 24 hours just as a Magic fan. I'm not going to miss those picks all that much. Cole Anthony, I loved what you brought off the court and as a teammate and your personality for fans, but I was kind of over the streakiness that he was bringing and kind of ready for a change. Even going into last season, I was kind of ready for a change there. I was high on KCP and disappointed it didn't work. And Desmond Bane seems like he's a better player than both of those guys combined, even to an extent. And I've just been thrilled. I'm looking forward to seeing how it all plays out. I'm not a jersey guy, but I was thinking last night, I was like, should I buy a Desmond Bane jersey? Maybe I should. And I just think he's going to fit a lot of what the culture of the Magic need. Obviously, offensively, his shooting is going to be a well welcomed appreciation here. He's not just a shooter on low volume; he's a shooter on high volume. Off catch and shoot, off movement. Can even do a little bit for himself there to get shots off the dribble, which will be really exciting. Not a perfect player as we've come to the conclusion of, but definitely someone who is going to fit and fix a lot of the issues for the Magic. Still concerns, I agree. What does the point guard play look like? Is that Anthony Black stepping up and continuing to grow there? Do they need to bring in someone like Tyus Jones or of that type to come into the Magic and help just kind of be someone that can stagger through? It seems like their defense probably won't take that much of a step back. Particularly if this team can stay healthy. So we'll see. Joe, any last thoughts before we say our final goodbyes on just all of the things we've been talking about?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there at the end in terms of the draft picks. Like that's relevant for roster building. That's relevant for the Grizzlies having flexibility. But the reason that you and I don't want to speak for you, but the reason that I got into covering the Grizzlies the way that I do, that I still do it a decade after leaving Memphis, it's the connection with the team and the connection with the city and the connection with the fan base, that interaction that you build. And that comes through the players, right? Like, you don't have that with the 2027 first-round pick. You have that with Desmond Bane.
Right.
And I can't stress enough the quality of person that Orlando is getting, not just the quality of player. Like, he is a competitive person. In my opinion, he was the captain of these Grizzlies teams. He's somebody that carries so much weight in terms of respect. And I love guys that are just hoopers, right? Like, Desmond Bane's a hooper, man. Like, he wants to show up, be in the gym, get to work. That's what he's going to do. And I think he's going to amplify the Orlando Magic's ability to contend, especially this coming season. They may pay for it down the road, but you can't think about it that way, especially in the Eastern Conference, where there's a clear lane for somebody to fill the void that the Celtics are almost certainly going to leave, at least for one season. And why not Orlando? I don't dispute the Magic at all for thinking about it. And they made an offer that the Grizzlies simply couldn't refuse.
Made a lot. I think it makes a lot of sense for both sides, to be honest. And, you know, I'm not one that loves to like sit and look at who won and lost the trade. Like, we won't know until we figure out where these picks lands. If the Magic have some crazy bad injuries and a couple of those seasons and those picks become top 10 picks, then, you know, yeah, there's going to be some players that could really help the Magic in those situations. But at the same point, if this team can stay healthy, they should be a top 4 team in the East for a long time, and for a very long time, you know, assuming they continue to like figure out some of these other little aspects of the roster that need to be improved.
Right.
Joe, I really, really appreciate you coming on the show. Like we were talking off camera, we've been following each other for a while through NBA Twitter. And this is finally a really good opportunity for us to connect, get to know each other a little bit, talk about some exciting basketball things. I appreciate your perspective on Desmond Bane. I've learned a lot more about him as a player through our conversation. Just blast all the listeners and viewers where they can find your work.
Sure. At Joe Mullinax on X, you know, at Locked On Grizz on X. You know, that's where a vast majority of my work will be, is Locked On Grizzlies, your team each and every single day. Proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network. You know, Apple, Spotify, Google, anywhere you get a podcast. I write every once in a while, but, you know, a vast majority of what I do right now is over on the podcast. So you mentioned Philip of Locked On Magic. We'll have him on for a crossover episode for Tuesday this week. And, you know, it's going to be as fun as it can be saying goodbye to a person the caliber of Desmond Bane, because he really is that good, and Magic fans should be excited. But Grizzlies fans are excited in a different way, because this is the most unpredictable summer for Memphis that we've had since 2019, when the rebuild was on, right? And Ja Morant was going to be the pick at number 2 overall. And, you know, they traded Mike Conley. That's what this feels like. It feels like the Mike Conley trade.
Sure.
And that worked out really well for Memphis, to be honest with you. So Grizzlies fans are hopeful, you know, that this is going to work out well. May not be best in the short term, but Memphis is in a spot where they can go any which way they want. And that's exciting.
It means a lot I don't know if those are the right words, but it means your words have impact when you say you're losing a beloved player. I'm not saying that about KCP.
Right.
I am saying that about Cole Anthony to an extent, but there's obviously some on-court production that doesn't weigh as much as we care about him as a person. Like, you're not going to meet a single Magic fan that doesn't want good things for Cole Anthony and want to see him have a very long, long career. We're not saying the same things about Casey. Doesn't mean we don't like him, but he just wasn't here, didn't have that impact. You know, he's only here for a season.
The homegrown talents are harder to say goodbye to. Like Desmond Bane, we watched Desmond Bane not grow up. He was 22 years old when he came to Memphis, but you watch them go from a college athlete to a professional. You watch them become, you know, not just a young man, but a grown man, right?
Yeah.
And you watch from afar, of course, but you come to feel like you know these guys, even though you don't. And it's different. It hits different when it's somebody that's been there since the beginning of their run. And that's Dez for sure for Memphis.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It'd be like the Magic trading Jalen Suggs in 2 years.
Yeah.
That would sting a lot, which trading for Desmond Bane might make that a possibility.
About to say.
We'll talk about that at a later date.
In a couple years. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, for sure. Joe, I really appreciate your time. I'm sure this won't be the last time we talk. Maybe there's another move down the line that makes sense. I don't know. Who knows? But I appreciate it. We'll take really good care of Desmond Bane here.
Please do.
The Magic fan base will get behind him very strong. And, he's coming to a good place. He's not going to come to a fan base that's going to, treat him negatively if he misses shots. Like, he's going to be loved here, and I don't expect him to miss many shots. So, thanks again for coming on. I'll make sure to tag all your locations, socials in our show description. So fans, if you want to follow more of Joe and what he's doing with Locked On Grizzlies, just check the link, the description in the show. Check the links in the show description. And that's going to wrap it up for this episode, Magic fans. Thanks again, Joe. Exciting time to be a Magic fan. Let's go Magic. Joe, I said we were going to talk for 30 minutes and it's almost an hour. So